Hi there, I'm John Moore, and I am a shamanic teacher from Maine in the United States. And today I'm going to talk to you about the spiritual body versus the physical body. And if you're not familiar with this concept, you might be asking, well, what the heck are you talking about? Like, I know I have a spirit and I know I have a body. And when I use the word body, I mainly refer to the physical body. And this is true. However, there are many components to a human being, and you can liken a human being to an onion with layer after layer after layer after layer. And with humans and with all living things or all things that have a physical representation, there is the physical aspect, which is the densest layer of what we are. And as we go back or deeper, we become less and less dense. We have less and less form. So you might be familiar with the aura, right? Maybe you've seen auras, maybe you've seen pictures of auras, or you've heard of the aura, but this energy field that surrounds living things and even non-living things. Um, so the aura consists of two layers. One layer is sort of the etheric body, as you were, and this is a level of spiritual energy that is quite close to physical body. It doesn't have the mass, the solidity of physical things, but it is very, very close to the physical realm. And so frequently people can see it or sense it, that sort of thing. It can interact with physical matter very readily because it's very close, right? So things like acupuncture, Reiki, and any sort of energy healing, energy transfer, Tai Chi, Qigong, all of these energy work practices are dealing with usually the etheric field. So this is the etheric body or the etheric field. A level in from that, and that's a little more dense but a little more shaped like the human body, is the etheric double, and this is a field that is a couple of inches to an inch away from that, completely surrounds the human body. And if you are able to see auras, you'll see sort of the shapeless part of the humans that can extend a few feet to like dozens of feet, and then you'll see this really close denser part that is much more that is much closer to human form. So that being said, many systems, many esoteric systems, spiritual systems, recognize lots of different bodies, and they're called bodies, but most of them are in fact formless. The etheric double probably has the most form of any of them, followed by the etheric field, which is vaguely has a shape. But then we start to get into subtler and subtler realms of existence. And so beneath that, and I will say this, I'll say that different systems recognize a different number of bodies. So some systems have 3, and some systems have 7, and some systems have 12, and some have 22. The way I like to think of it is that humans exist on a large spectrum, much like the electromagnetic spectrum, right? So, at one end of the electromagnetic spectrum is visible light. We can, these are electromagnetic waves that we can see. And at another end is X-rays and gamma rays and all of that. And and somewhere in there are radio waves that we can't see. All of these waves, while they interact with each other and can interfere with each other, basically can occupy the same physical space, right? In this room right now are radio waves from all over the universe. Okay, there are radio waves from stars light years away from here in this room. There are radio waves from the radio towers nearby that where I could, if I had a radio and turned it on, you would hear voices come through. The laptop I'm recording this on has a radio transmitter and receiver that talks to my modem that gives me internet access. So all of these different types of waves, and in the meantime there's light coming through. You can see the window behind me, there's light there. All of these are electromagnetic waves, and there's some level, I'm sure, of radiation here. You know, so all of these things can coexist. They might interfere with each other if they, you know, or they might interact somehow. But they can coexist. And the same thing is true for, I'm just going to use people, but we could say all physical beings, all living beings, and lots of non-living beings. We exist on a spectrum where there are layers and layers and layers of us that, you know, once you become formless, there's very little that has to do with physical space, but you know, we can coexist on all of these different layers, much like radio waves can. So we've talked about the physical body, which we all know, right? It's the thing, we have our senses, and we have mass, we have weight, we have we you know we reflect and absorb certain wavelengths of light. All of these things, we interact with the physical world. Our etheric body also can interact with the physical world, but mostly will interact with things that are in the etheric realm. And so, for example, if you ever get a bad vibe from somebody, right, it can be your, you know, if you ever had somebody walk into a room and without even looking at them, like you have this horrible feeling or something, and you turn around and, oh, it's that person. You know, what's happening is your etheric fields are interacting, and it's, you know, that is interacting with your physical body. Beneath that is what we call the astral or soul body, or, you know, some people call this the emotional body or what have you. When we do shamanic journeying or astral projection, or you travel in a dream state or any of these things, we're working on this level of the astral. And the astral can be given form, but it's really, really flexible. It's really, really malleable, and is able to be affected by consciousness. So at an astral level, this is where a lot of shape shifting happens from a shamanic perspective. So, you know, if I turn into a werewolf, I don't turn into a werewolf. That usually, at least in my experience, doesn't happen physically. What happens is the astral body takes on a different shape. It takes on different characteristics, and we do that for a number of reasons. Or we merge with a power animal, or any of these things. These things happen on the astral. On the astral, we have the ability to break off parts of ourselves and travel, and that's what astral projection is. It's also what shamanic journeying is, and it's also what happens when we get what's called soul loss, when we experience trauma and parts of us break off and get lost, and then you have to go see a shaman who will do what's called a soul retrieval ceremony for you and return that part back. There are subtler and subtler levels at your very core. I'm not, you know, don't have the time to describe all of them, and then, you know, also different systems describe them differently. Those are kind of the main ones: the physical, the etheric, and the astral. And this is where most spiritual healing takes place, right? So energy therapies tend to work at the etheric level, and soul therapies like shamanism tend to work at the astral or soul level. But there's always overlap. All of these bodies, again, they can affect each other. So if I heal some part of my soul body, that's going to have an effect on the etheric field, that might have an effect on my physical body. And this is how a lot of spiritual healing can take place on the spiritual plane. So beneath that, there are subtler and subtler areas, the causal, all of these things, until we finally get to this point of divinity, this spark of divinity from the light of divinity. So I'm going to use the term God here because there's not a, God, the universe, goddess, what have you, the creator, the oneness, the thing that is inseparable from all things, what have you. I don't want to put a lot of terms around it because there's a lot of baggage with a lot of terms. If I use the word God, it brings to mind like individual deity, and that's not really it. This is divinity itself, and we are a spark of that. And the way that I describe how we are divine and how we are all connected is that if you were to shine a bright white light at a glass prism, that glass prism could separate that light out into innumerable rays of different colors of light. And so each one of those rays would look like they were individual rays of light. And in a way, they are. After they cross through the prism, they are. However, if you were to take away the white light, all of those rays of colored light would cease to exist. And it's the same way. So divinity is our source, and we are all different shades or rays or what have you that comes from that divinity. Without that divinity, we wouldn't exist. Nothing would exist. But divinity exists in infinite varieties, in infinite diversity, forms of diversity. And so it really is nice to think that we are connected. And one way to visualize this, although it is completely, utterly formless, you can't locate it in time or space, but to visualize it, to get in touch with it, is very frequently people will visualize like a bright white star in the middle of their heart, even though it is not technically physically located anywhere. But for us to make sense of it, we might have to use the metaphor of a bright white star in the center of our chest. And that helps us get in touch with our sense of divinity. And this is a very healing process. And in fact, when we do that, we don't just heal ourselves, we start to heal the world. There's a great spiritual process taught by shamanic teacher Sandra Ingerman called Transfiguration. I highly recommend, if you can, look at her courses, read her books, listen to her audios about Transfiguration. It is not technically a shamanic practice. However, it is an extremely healing process. And it is about getting in touch with your divinity. And when you do this practice, you essentially give off healing light around you that affects everything, including the environment, including, affecting the plants and trees and animals and air and water and everything around you. So it's a very beautiful, beautiful practice, and I highly recommend it if you get a chance to learn and practice it, to absolutely do that. So this is just a very brief introduction into sort of the spiritual bodies and the physical body. I'm going to go more into it in future videos. I hope that you will subscribe. I'm going to talk a lot about using these different bodies to affect reality. Some people might call that magic or manifestation or law of attraction or what have you. It's spirit work. It's the way that we work in shamanism as well. By affecting these different bodies, we can create change in physical reality. With that, I will leave you. I hope you are happy and healthy, and I will talk to you really soon.